According to Pisanius, joy, a consequence of love, is a spiritual rest and contentment and enjoyment of any pleasure. Jesus, son of Sirach, says that the life of man consists of heartful joy. Although it is a vice and not a virtue to enjoy those things which are not proper, St. Augustine says that the sudden sadness always follows worldly joy. We may compare the virtue of joyfulness to the rooster who sings day and night according to the hours, moved by the natural cheerfulness in his heart, and who arranges his joyous life reasonably in an orderly fashion. Solomon says, "There is no wealth greater than the health of the body. There is no joy greater than the joy of the heart." And he also says, "A cheerful heart causes man's life to blossom, while the spirit of sadness dries the bone." Never rejoice at other people's misfortune, for you cannot know when adversity may come to you. Seneca says, "In prosperity, do not rejoice too much, and in adversity, do not be downcast." Thomas Jefferson's Rules of Living. Never put off till tomorrow what you can do today. Never trouble another for what you can do yourself. Never spend your money before you have it. Never buy what you do not want because it is cheap. Pride costs us more than hunger, thirst, and cold. We seldom repent having eaten too little. Nothing is troublesome that we do willingly. How much pain the evils have cost us that have never happened. Take things always by the smooth handle. When angry, count to 10 before you speak. If very angry, 100. Loyalty, according to Terence, is pure and perfect faith, never showing one thing for another. The virtue of loyalty may be compared to the cranes. They have a king, and they all serve him with more loyalty than is encountered in any other animal. At night, when they go to sleep, they place their king in the middle, and they surround him, and they always send 2 or 3 among them to stand guard. And these, in order not to fall asleep, keep a foot in the air, while the other stands on the ground. And in the foot which is up, they always hold a stone, so that, should sleep surprise them, the stone should fall, and they would feel it. And this they do out of loyalty to one another to protect their king, and the other cranes who sleep. Seneca says, "He who loses faith cannot lose anything else." Solomon says, "Many people are called pious, but you will not find many who are loyal." Socrates says, "Be loyal to those who trust you, and you are certain never to have a bad end." Juvenal says, "Everything on earth is praised by somebody, criticized by somebody else, but loyalty and truthfulness are praised by all." Longinus says, "There are 3 ways whereby a man may become great: being loyal, telling the truth, and not thinking idle thoughts." There is no greater torment. Envy, which is the vice opposite to the virtue of love, may be of 2 kinds. The first is when we are saddened by the fortune of others, whereas the second is when we exult at the misfortunes of others. But both these feelings may at times exist without any vice, for it is good to exult at other people's defects in order that they may correct them, and to despise their good fortune in order to keep them from becoming arrogant. But before we can have full understanding of such a feeling, we must always also see and understand the nature of virtue itself. Aristotle says that virtue is a good quality of one's mind, whereby one lives righteously and avoids evil. And virtue is also an ordered, well-built mind. It is not a natural or artificial physical beauty, but rather resides in the soul, in reason, in piety of life and customs, in love of God and in honor. We may compare the vice of envy to the magpie, who is a bird so envious that when she sees her young getting fat in the nest, she hits them in the ribs with her beak so as to infect their flesh and make them thin. Seneca says that envy draws evil from good and good from evil. And he also says that it is easier to avoid distress at poverty than envy of riches. And we read in the Summa of Vices that just as the worm gnaws wood and vermin eats up cloth, so envy corrodes man. Solomon says, when your enemy falls and is ruined, do not rejoice at his ruin, for it does not please God. And also, he who rejoices at other people's misfortunes will not go unpunished. St. Gregory says that. My friends, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain a little. Number one, it's free. Two, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you've ever been looking for to make a podcast in one place. Go ahead and download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That there is no greater torment in the world than envy, and that where there is envy, there cannot be love. The greatest vengeance one may invest against an envious man is to do him good, Seneca says. Do not offend anyone and do not acquire enemies. But envy does both to a high degree. Ovid says, envy always makes grass seem higher in other people's meadow. Plato says, an envious man is never free of pain, just as a hypocrite is never free from fear. St. Augustine says, he who is envious can love no one, and so there can be no worse vice than envy. Homer says, one should fear the envy of relatives and friends more than the envy of enemies. Ptolemy says, the envious man is even content to suffer loss in order to damage someone else. About this vice of envy, we read in the Old Testament. Cain saw that his brother Abel was prospering, and that from day to day all his property was improving. This happened because he received these graces from God. Out of envy, Cain slew his brother with a club. And Cain and Abel were the first two brothers that ever lived on earth. And this was the first blood ever shed in the world. Envy is blind, and she has no other quality than that of detracting from virtue. The American Dream. Beneath the American faith in the future lie two main concepts. One material, the other at least potentially spiritual. The first is what James Truslow Adams called the American Dream. It is the hope of a better life than older lands and ages ever afforded. More security, more comfort, more money, wider horizons. No one should sneer at this concept just because it is necessarily material. For seekers of the American dream performed prodigies of courage. Often they performed them unselfishly, thinking of their children rather than themselves. Willa Cather, looking at the Nebraska, concluded that the earliest generation was truly heroic. The generation that subdued the wild land and broke up the virgin prairies. She wrote, was an army of rugged men and women who inspire respect and compel admiration. Their resourcefulness matched their courage. Beginning in utter poverty of sod houses, they could look out at the end of the days of broad stretches of fertility and say, we made this with our backs and hands. If only we are faithful to our past, we shall not have fear of our future. The cause of peace, justice, and liberty need not fail and must not fail. This was said by John Foster Dulles. A Long Life, A Good Life by Thomas Jefferson. You ask if I would agree to live my 70 or rather 73 years over again? To which I say, yeah. I think with you that it is a good world on the whole, that it has been framed on a principle of benevolence and more pleasure than pain dealt out to us. These are indeed, who might say nay, gloomy and hypochondriac minds, inhabitants of diseased bodies, disgusted with the present and despairing of the future, always counting that the worst will happen because it may happen. To these I say, how much pain have causes the evils which have never happened? My temperament is sanguine. I steer my bark with hope in the head, leaving fear astern. My hopes, indeed, sometimes fail, but not oftener than the foreboding of the gloomy. There are, I acknowledge, even in the happiest life, some terrible convulsions, heavy offsets against the opposite page of the account. I have often wondered for what good end at the sensations of grief could be intended. All our other passions within proper bounds have a useful object, and the perfection of the moral character is, not in a stoical apathy, so hypocritically vaunted, and so untruly too, because impossible, but in just equilibrium of all the passions. I wish the pathologists then would tell us what is the use of grief in the economy, and of what good it is the cause, proximate or remote. Begin the Day with Friendliness by Frank B. Whitney. Begin the day with friendliness, and only friends you'll find. Yes, greet the dawn with happiness. Keep happy thoughts in mind. Salute the day with peaceful thoughts, and peace will fill your heart. Begin the day with a joyful soul, and joy will be your part. Begin the day with friendliness. Keep friendly all day long. Keep your soul a friendly thought, your heart a friendly song. Have in your mind a word of cheer for all who come your way, and they will bless you too, in turn, and wish you happy day. Begin each day with friendly thoughts, and as the day goes on, keep friendly, loving, good, and kind. Just as you were at dawn, the day will be a friendly one. And then at night you'll find that you were happy all day long, through friendly thoughts in mind. A smile costs nothing, but gives much. It enriches those who receive without making poorer those who give. It takes but a moment, but the memory of it sometimes lasts forever. None is so rich or mighty that he can get along without it, and none is so poor but that he can be made rich by it. A smile creates happiness in the home, fosters goodwill in business, and is the countersign of friendship. It brings rest to the weary, cheer to the discouraged, sunshine to the sad, and it is nature's best antidote for trouble. Yet it cannot be bought, begged, borrowed, or stolen, for it is something that is of no value to anyone until it is given away. Some people are too tired to give you a smile. Give them one of yours. As none needs a smile so much as he who has no more to give. By an unknown author. Rules of life. The rule of life is to be found within yourself. Ask yourself constantly, what is the right thing to do? Beware of ever doing that which you are likely, sooner or later, to repent of having done. It is better to live in peace than in bitterness and strife. It is better to believe in your neighbors than to fear and distrust them. The superior man does not wrangle. He is firm, but not quarrelsome. He is sociable, but not clannish. The superior man sets a good example for his neighbors. He is considerate of their feelings and their property. Consideration for others is the basis of a good life, a good society. Feel kindly toward everyone. Be friendly and pleasant among yourself. Be generous and fair. Channing said, "The greatest man is he who chooses the right with invincible resolution, who resists the sorest tempestations from within and without, who is calmest in storms, and whose resilience on truth, on virtue, on God is the most unfaltering." Habit is the flywheel of society by William James. How perfectly replete is God's mind with all the laws and types of beauty, the stately grace and majesty of the earth, its woods and plains, its streams and seas, the sunshine flashing over all, the sunsets gorgeous in their pomp and pillared amethyst, opal and gold. He pours the beauty of the moonlight upon a resting world, weird and fantastic, yet lovely as a dream. He spreads the infinite canopy of the night and touches it everywhere with dots of splendor. He makes each season a moving panorama of sights and sounds, of brilliant gleams or fragrant odors, full constantly of beauty to him who studies it. Habit is the enormous flywheel of society, its most precious conservation agent. There is no more miserable human being than one in whom nothing is habitual but indecision. Full half of the time of such a man goes to the deciding or the regretting of matters which ought to be so ingrained in him as particularly not to exist for his consciousness at all. The first quality of success: get to the point. One of the striking characteristics of successful persons is their faculty of determining the relative importance of different things. There are many things which it is desirable to do. A few are essential, and there is no more useful quality of the human mind than that which enables its possessor at once to distinguish which the few essential things are. Life is so short and time so fleeting that much which one would wish to do must feign or be omitted. He is fortunate who perceives at a glance what it will do and what it will not do. To omit this invaluable faculty is not possessed in a remarkable degree naturally, is susceptible of cultivation to a considerable extent. Let anyone adopt the practice of reflection every morning what must necessarily be done during the day, and then begin by doing the most important things first, leaving the others to take their chance of being done or left undone. In this way, attention first to the things of first importance soon acquires the almost irresistible force of habit and becomes a rule of life. There is no rule more indispensable to success, for procrastination is a thief of time. Avoid deception by word or silence by John Ruskin. And this is especially to be insisted on in an early education of people. It should be pointed out to them with continual earnestness that the essence of lying is in deception, not in word. A lie may be told by silence, by equivocation, by the accent on a syllable, by a glance of the eye attaching a peculiar significance to a sentence. And all these kinds of lies are worse and baser by many degrees than a lie plainly worded, so that no form of blinded conscience is so far sunk that which comforts itself for having deceived, because the deception was by gesture or silence instead of utterance. And finally, according to Tennyson's deep and trenchant line, a lie which is half a truth is ever the worst of lies. On the nature of friendship, the third love, called friendship or companionship, consists of wanting permissible and honest things from one another. Just as Cicero tells us in his book on friendship, such friendship has its foundations in a righteous and charitable unification of the aims of life, when two persons enjoy talking and living and being one with the other. Such a love comes from three sources. The first is when a man only desires and hopes to obtain some advantage from his friend. Such a friendship or love is a false love, and cannot justly be called either friendship or love, but rather a mercenary striving for gain, as is well expressed by Cicero in his book on the nature of God. The second is when a man wishes well for his friend without thinking of his own welfare, and this is perfect love. The third is when one wants to share with the other, and this is good friendship and good love. The test of this true and good love lies in three main things. The first is to love one's friend with a pure heart and to do what one thinks will bring him pleasure. The second is to avoid doing what one thinks will displease him or will be detrimental to him. Friends are made and kept in three ways. First, by honoring them in their presence. Second, by saying good things of them in their absence. Third, by serving them in their needs. On this subject, Solomon says, "Nothing can be compared to a faithful friend." Ovid says, "You will find many friends in prosperity, but in adversity you will find yourself alone." Four things are better old than new: wine, fish, oil, but above all, an old friend. Aristotle says, "The older the tree, the more it needs support." And similarly, the older the man, the more need he has of a friend. For there can be no good when one is alone. In the opinion of a certain moral philosophers, happiness is nothing but love and friendship for others. This is true if we speak of the moral happiness in this life and not refer to the eternal happiness which is not except God. This is what Cicero wanted to say in his book on friendship when he quoted the saying that the great master Archita of Tarentino, who said that if a man were to go to heaven and were to behold the beauty of the sun and of the moon and of the stars and all the beauties of heaven and of earth and of all the whole universe, and then were to return to earth, all this joy would be nothing for him unless he had someone to whom he could relate it to, and with whom he could discuss it as though with himself. It would even be a bitter grief for him. Plato and Seneca both said, "Before loving someone, test him, and having tested him, love him with a good heart." And note also, a good man is corrupted by bad company, while a bad man becomes righteous in a good company, and rids himself of infamy by keeping company with one better than himself. There are few subjects which have been more written upon and less understood than that of friendship. To follow the dictates of some, this virtue, instead of being the assuager of pain, becomes a source of every inconvenience. Such speculists, by expecting too much from friendship, dissolving the connection, and by drawing the bands too closely, at length can break them. By Oliver Goldsmith. Challenge. What if I have eyes that do not see? this gaily colored world of forms and show? What if in the dark I always go, my footsteps led by sound and memory? What if autumn never dressed a tree in gold and brown for me to love and know? And what if the sunset always hides its glow, and morning's dawn does not unveil to me? My father gave me strength of soul and mind. My mother taught me of how to laugh and pray. My ears and nose and fingers are designed to bring me knowledge, beauty, work, and play. I do not envy those who see the light, for I know my way and I have no fear of night. Faith means believing that it is incredible, or it is no virtue at all. Hope means hoping that when things are hopeless, or it is no virtue at all. And charity means pardoning what is unpardonable, or it is no virtue at all. By G.K. Chesterton, Heretics. The Ladies' Home Journal, written in February 1960. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain that you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out of the world we find, success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but soon or late the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. The art of getting along. Sooner or later, a man, if he is wise, discovers that life is a mixture of good days and bad, victory and defeat, give and take. He learns that it doesn't pay to be a sensitive soul, that he should let some things go over his head like water off a duck's back. He learns that he who loses his temper usually loses. He learns that all men have burnt toast for breakfast now and then, and that he shouldn't take the other fellow's grouch too seriously. He learns that carrying a chip on his shoulder is the easiest way to get into a fight. He learns that the quickest way to become unpopular is to carry tales and gossip about others. He learns that most people are human, and that it doesn't do any harm to smile and say good morning, even if it's raining. He learns that most of the other fellows are as ambitious as he is, that they have brains that are as good or better, and that hard work and not cleverness is the secret of success. He learns that it doesn't matter so much who gets the credit so long as the business shows a profit. He comes to realize that the business could run along perfectly without him. He learns to sympathize with the youngsters coming into the business because he remembers how bewildered he was when he first started out. He learns not to worry when he does not make hit every time, because experience has shown if he always gives his best, his average will break pretty well. He learns that no man ever got to first base alone, and that it is only through a cooperative effort that we move on to better things. He learns that the fellows are not any harder to get along with in one place than another, and that getting along depends about 98% on himself. By Anonymous. Let me but do my work from day to day, in field or forest, at the desk or loom, in roaring marketplace or tranquil room. Let me but find it in my heart to say, when vagrant wishes beckon me astray, this is my work, my blessing, not my doom. Of all who live, I am the one by whom this work can be best done in the right way. Then shall I see it not too great nor small to suit my spirit and to prove my powers. Then shall I cheerful greet the laboring hours and cheerful turn when the long shadows fall at eventide to play and love and rest, because I know for me my work is best, said Henry Van Dyke. Let me but live my life from year to year with the forward face and unreluctant soul, not hurrying to nor turning from the goal, not mourning for the things that disappear in the dim past, nor holding back in fear from what the future veils, but with a whole and happy heart that pays its toll to youth and age and travels on with cheer, said Robert Browning. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do after them, the good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you, Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it, here under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honorable man. So are they all honorable men. Come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me, but Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He hath brought my many captive home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious, when that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept? Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambitious? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious. And sure, he is an honorable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. When God made the earth, he could have finished it, but he didn't. Instead, he left it as a raw material to tease us, to tantalize us, to set us thinking and experimenting and risking and adventuring. And therein we find our supreme interest in living. Have you ever noticed that small children in the nursery will ignore clever mechanical toys in order to build with spools and strings and sticks and blocks a world of their own imagination? And so with grown-ups too. God gave us a world unfinished so that we might share in the joys and satisfaction of creation. He left the oil in Trenton Rock. He left the electricity in the clouds. He left the rivers unbridged and the mountains untrailed. He left the forests unfelled and the cities unbuilt. He left the laboratories unopened. He left the diamonds uncut. He gave us the challenge of raw materials, not the satisfaction of perfect finished things. He left the music unsung and the dramas unplayed. He left the poetry undreamed in order that men and women might not become bored, but engage in stimulating, exciting, creative activities that keep them thinking, working, experimenting, and experiencing all the joys and durable satisfactions of achievement. A man in Florida turned a miserable old green water swamp, mosquito infested and snake inhabited, into a beautiful garden. When we go about our work earnestly and perseveringly, it often happens that although we have to tack about again and again, we get ahead of those who are helped by wind and tide. By Get. Once a sanctimonious visitor who was inspecting it acclaimed, "Oh, dear brother, what a beautiful garden you and the Lord have made from that swamp." "Yes," came the reply, "but you should have seen it when the Lord had it all by himself." So it is with all the world. There is no Shangri-La where our every want be supplied by wishing. There is no substance to the philosophy of getting by. There is nothing worth while gained by chance. Work, thought, creation, these give life its stimulus, its real satisfaction, its intriguing value. William Shakespeare said, "I am a true laborer. I earn that I eat, get that I wear, owe no man hate, envy no man's happiness, glad of other men's good." The Simplest Way by Malcolm Schloss. Love without ceasing, give without measure. Who can exhaust God's limitless treasure? It's the little things we do and say that mean so much as we go our way. A kindly deed can lift a load from weary shoulders on the road. Or a gentle word, like summer rain, may soothe some heart and banish pain. What joy or sadness often springs from just the simple little things. By Willa Hoy. Plato said, "Perfect wisdom hath four parts. Wisdom, the principle of doing things right. Justice, the principle of doing things equally in public and private. Fortitude, the principle of not flying danger but meeting it. And temperance, the principle of subduing desires and living moderately." Love, the key to accomplishment. Can not one say with authority to the young artist, whether working in stone, in color, in tones, or in character forms of the novel, so far from dreading that your moral purpose will interfere with your beautiful creation, go forward in the clear conviction that unless you are suffused soul and body, one might say, with that moral purpose which finds its largest expression in love, that is, the love of all things in their proper relation, unless you are suffused with this love, do not dare to meddle with beauty. Unless you are suffused with beauty, do not dare to meddle with love. Unless you are suffused with truth, do not dare to meddle with goodness. In a word, unless you are suffused with truth, wisdom, goodness, and love, abandon the hope that the ages will accept you as an artist. Death be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For these whom thou think'st thou dost overthrow, die not. Poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me from rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be. Much pleasure then from thee much more must flow, and soonest our best men with thee do go. Rest of their bones and souls delivery. Thou'rt slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell, and poppy or charms can make us sleep as well. And better than thy stroke, why swell'st thou then One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Julius Caesar said, "Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. Of all the wonders that I yet have heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come." The Way of the World by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Laugh, and the world laughs with you. Weep, and you weep alone. This grand old earth must borrow its mirth. It has troubles enough of its own. Sing, and the hills will answer. Sigh, it is lost on the air. The echoes bound to a joyful sound, but shrink from voices' care. Be glad, and your friends are many. Be sad, and you lose them all. There are none to decline your nectared wine, but alone we must drink life's gall. There is room in the halls of pleasure for a long and lordly train, but one by one we must all file out through the narrow aisles of pain. Feast, and your halls are crowded. Fast, and the world goes by. Succeed and give, 'twill help you live, but no one can help you die. Rejoice, and men will seek you. Grieve, and they turn and go. They want full measure of all your pleasure, but they do not want your woe. Happiness is not in strength, or wealth, or power, or all three. It lies in ourselves, in true freedom, in the conquest of every ignoble fear, in perfect self-government, in a power of contentment and peace, and the even flow of life, even in poverty, exile, disease, and the very valley of the shadow of death. By Epictetus. Thomas Jefferson, eternal foe of tyranny. I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions, but laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind as that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change. With the change of circumstance, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear still the coat which fitted him when a boy, as civilized society to remain ever under the regime of their barbarous ancestors. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of person under the protection of the habeas corpus. That is at the first inaugural address of Thomas Jefferson. What is the Constitution by Thomas Paine? A constitution is not a thing in name only, but in fact. It has not an ideal but a real existence, and wherever it cannot be produced in a visible form, there is none. A constitution is a thing antecedent to a government, and a government is only a creature of a constitution. The constitution of a country is not the act of its government, but of a people constituting a government. It is the body of elements to which you refer and quote article by article, and contains the principles on which the government shall be established, the form in which it shall be organized, the powers it shall have, the mode of elections, the duration of Congress, and, in fine, everything that relates to the complete organization of a civil government, and the principles on which it shall act, and by which it shall be bound. A constitution is to a government. Therefore, what the laws made by that government are to a court of judicature. The court of judicature does not make laws, neither can it alter them. It only acts in conformity to the laws made, and the government is in like manner governed by the Constitution. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Simple medicine. Get busy. Do not allow idleness to deceive you, for while you give him today, he steals tomorrow from you. If your enemy has injured you or your friend deceived you, if your brightest hopes have been clouded or your reputation blackened, pray for your enemies and then up and be doing. Better gather field flowers, plait rushes, weed the garden, or black your own shoes than be idle. Occupation will raise your spirit, while idleness will bring it down to the dust. Occupation will often blunt the edge of the sharpest grief, keep the body in health, and preserve the mind in comparative peace. He that is in trouble should do something to get rid of it. Something must be done, and something by yourself too. When you are in trouble or otherwise, it will stick as close to you as a skin that covers you. The moment you feel yourself getting moody and miserable, seek divine support by prayer, and then set yourself a task immediately, something that will compel you to exert yourself, and you will be surprised at the relief it will afford. What's up, Richecho? Ooh, caught me mid Success? He has achieved success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has gained the respect of intelligent men and women and the love of little children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his task, who has left the world better than he found it, whether by an improv poppy, a perfect poem, or a rescued soul, who has never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, who has always looked for the best in others and given the best he had, whose life was an inspiration, whose memory a benediction. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain. By Emily Dickinson. In nothing do men more nearly approach the gods than in doing good to their fellow man, said Cicero. Ignorance, says a distinguished writer, is the mother of superstition, of bigotry, of fanaticism, of disaffection, of cruelty, and of rebellion. These are its legitimate children. It never yet produced any other, and never will to the end of the world. And we may lay this down as an incontestable truth, that a well-informed and intelligent people, more particularly a people well acquainted with the sacred writings, will always be more orderly, more decent, more humane, more virtuous, more religious, more obedient to their superiors than a people totally devoid of all instruction and all education.